Thank you. Thank you, Natasha, for that wonderful mythic story. I'm going to tell the story of Pelorus Jack. I'm warning you, if you're prone to seasickness, this takes place entirely in the Pacific Ocean. In 1888, a ship called the Brindle was sailing in the coastal waters of New Zealand. It was going through the ocean passage that separates the North and South Island of New Zealand. It entered through a body of water called Pelorus Sound, and it was headed toward French Pass. There's a tiny island in between the North and South Island of New Zealand called D'Urville Island, and French Pass is the passage between D'Urville Island and the South Island of New Zealand. It's a common shipping route, but it did have a reputation as a sailor's graveyard. You see, French Pass had a sharp rock and sometimes fierce winds that started up currents that moved ships toward the rocks. So sailors treated that water with a lot of respect. This time, at the start of the passage, a dolphin swam in front of the ship and around the ship, and it dove into the wake that the ship left, and then it darted out ahead. It was having a lot of fun, but the sailors were annoyed. The dolphin was standing in their way, and they pulled out a rifle to shoot it. And the captain's wife said, "Don't shoot that dolphin, it's trying to tell us something." So the ship followed the dolphin through the passage, and when they got to French Pass, the dolphin pointed the way. It showed the crew where the safe passage was. This was amazing. And the dolphin didn't do this just once. It kept showing up to guide ships through that waterway. And it became so familiar that the shipping crews gave the dolphin a name. They called him Pelorus Jack, after Pelorus Sound. And over time, the dolphin became a comfort to shipping crews. They would actually stop and wait for the dolphin to show up if it wasn't there. And Pelorus Jack was just a very familiar sight. And his fame grew and grew. Beyond the shipping crews, the people of New Zealand learned about Pelorus Jack, and he became a hero. After many years of guiding ships through the waterway between the islands of New Zealand, Pelorus Jack was guiding a passenger ship called the Penguin. Somebody on board the ship, either a crew member or a passenger, was drunk and decided it would be a good sport to shoot a dolphin. So he pulled out a rifle and fired it at the dolphin. The crew were horrified. They tackled the guy with the gun to make sure he couldn't fire another shot. But they saw Pelorus Jack dive into the water with blood streaming out of a wound. And they thought, what's going to happen to our beloved Pelorus Jack? Well, he disappeared for a while, number of weeks, but he did come back. He looked hale and hearty, although there was a visible wound. But the poor dolphin, I think, also had a wound in his psyche. After that, he could not guide the passenger ship, the Penguin, any longer through that passageway. The Cabinet of New Zealand passed an order in council based on their Fisheries Act that stipulated you can't fire a gun at a dolphin from a ship. And they did that precisely to protect Pelorus Jack, because that's how beloved he was. About 4 years after the shooting incident happened, a tragedy happened in French Pass. There was a shipwreck. It was the passenger ship, the Penguin. And it was a terrible tragedy. The whole country talked about it. But even though it shocked the nation, it boosted the reputation of Pelorus Jack as a protector of ships. Why did Pelorus Jack do this? One speculation is that he was lonely and he wanted something to do. He was one of a breed of dolphin called Rhesus dolphin, and Rhesus dolphin is very common in parts of the Pacific Ocean, but it's very rare around New Zealand. Maybe there was just no other pack of dolphins for him to travel with, and that's what he did for an amusement. He disappeared from guiding ships in 1912, and there's been a lot of rumor and speculation about the death of Pelorus Jack. There was a story that a whaler accidentally killed him, not knowing he was Pelorus Jack, and felt extremely guilty about it afterwards. Another story was that somebody actually found the carcass of Pelorus Jack. That rumor was actually credible because at age 24 and a little bit more than that, he did live approximately the average life expectancy of a dolphin. But even though his death was shrouded in mystery, his reputation grew and grew until he had an international reputation. Tourists came to New Zealand to take the boat cruise to see Pelorus Jack. There were songs written about him, and one of the tourists who came to New Zealand for that reason was the famous American author Mark Twain. There were songs written about Pelorus Jack. There was a candy bar named after him, and in Scotland they invented a country dance called Pelorus Jack. So that's the story of Pelorus Jack, the celebrity dolphin. And now I'm going to welcome Paul Nash to finish our program.